So, hi everybody. This is the week 7 get together for TCL 62. We are in the middle of the end. Looks like we've all been working on getting our um app looking promising and inviting story well underway. So I will hand it over to Jeremiah to kick us off for demoing what we've got on that regard so far.
Hey everyone. So this week is a little bit different since it's kind of like a halfway point and we are changing the way things look and not adding functionality. So does anybody want to show us where we're at? Kick off showing the pretty things that we've made.
We haven't actually done any official styling yet. We essentially just set up the styling and then spent time getting all of our issues planned out and written. And I like all four of us kind of were in, collaborating on that and deciding to set up. So I don't know if a demo really makes sense, but yeah, I don't know if you still want us to do one. I guess we can show the
Um,
code where we did the setup. But
yeah,
I think everyone looked at it.
if you want to show the like setting up, because I know we're using Chakra, or like if you have anything in Figma to show like the direction that we're going, or anything like that.
God, I got it. Cool. I can show the Figma we planned out, and then if someone else wants to, I don't know if we need to show the code, but yeah, if someone else wants to do that, give me a second here. I'm just gonna share my screen.
Yeah, I can walk through the code if you'd like.
Sorry, Figma for some reason takes a really long time to load always on my computer, so give it a minute. Here we go. Okay. Yeah, so we started by doing some of the exercises suggested in the issue. We narrowed down our app vibe to 3 main words here, 3 themes: clean, fun and inviting, and bright. Then we made a mood board as suggested. So we just kind of brainstormed ideas by looking at various UIs. We screenshot a lot of them, and then we kind of narrowed down from there which ones we really like. Used Cluelers to find some color palettes we liked. Used Google Fonts to find fonts we like. And we kind of then landed on some color palettes up here. This was the inspiration, this UI we really liked the most on the left side here. And then made some really simple wireframes to basically see how you might apply some of the colors and how the layout might look different. And then on different views, like for example, when you're trying to submit a button and different error messages might pop up, how those might look. How we played around with some of the colors to see what we liked better there. Yeah, and that was a good amount of planning that we did. And then we also took some time to really think about, once we made these really simple wireframes, we tried to think about how we could break those into issues. And then those were updated on GitHub.
Yeah, it looks great. It looks like you have everything planned out.
Nice. Awesome. Okay, I'll stop share and Jen can go some basics of the code.
Yeah, 1 second. All right. So we essentially did some setup for being able to style our app with Chakra. So we, per the Chakra's documentation, we um, uh, imported or installed the Chakra library in our it imported it into our index.js file or index.jsx. And then we set up some kind of color variables, and then the font that a couple of the fonts that we had decided on for styling, and then wrapped our app component in the Chakra provider component along with the theme that we've set up so far. And we may add some to our theme as well. And then from here, we can, in each of our apps components, we can add the different Chakra UI components and make it look pretty.
Yeah, that looks great. Nice work so far. I think I pass it back to Lyle.
Yeah, is there any challenges you all had with doing any of the implementation or anything? Or, I mean, like, was there any other considerations for why we wanted to choose this one and not any of the other ones? And, you know, kind of some of the backing of the decision there?
I guess I basically pitched it to everyone because I'm a big fan of it, and everyone graciously agreed. And from my experience, I suggested that it has a low learning curve compared to some other frameworks. And I did a kind of guided people through what I knew, which is not tons, but I think it's easy to pick up on.
We also kind of agreed as a group that nobody likes Bootstrap. Arch actually shared a very what I'm going to call a diss site dedicated simply to making fun of Bootstrap used styled websites. So that was kind of like, that one was immediately off the off the table. And me having some experience with MUI that I was not particularly fond of also prevented us from going towards that direction. So of the mainstream frameworks out there, Chakra kind of based on Arch's recommendation was the clear choice.
Works for me. The trolling and dissing. You know, there's a lot of that going around in Devland, but it's always fun when it's done in good fun. So cool. All right. Well, then I am going to kick us over. So our learning module for this week and our last learning module of all of them is communication for developers. So let me find my share screen button and grab that one. Yeah, can everybody see a Firefox window? Oh, you guys, your window over here.
Yes.
Cool. All right, hit view, and off we go. So, this week's communication for devs. This is one of the key things, especially for us being the Collab Lab, being the collaboration focused program that it is. I mean, obviously, communication is pretty much everything here. And we save this for last because we want to kind of have a little bit of discussion about it, having kind of already gone through it. But it's still, kind of one of the most important things to take lessons that we've learned here, hone them in, and keep getting better at it. It's a lifelong learning process, but one that is, critical and important to anything that you're going to try and do. So we've got, kind of three main areas we're going to talk about, documentation, pull requests, and communicating with other devs, and, kind of drill into each one of those areas and why they are important and how to handle them correctly. So for documentation, let's talk about the what and the why. So this is going to apply more to things that you might dump into like a wiki or a docs site. You'll see a lot of the libraries, Chakra, you're just playing around in one. Everybody will kind of have a how do I use this software, type of documentation. The why of these things is, what did I do? Writing things down, or I'm sorry, we're getting a little ahead. So why do we do documentation? Is we want to know what did I do? Writing things down helps you learn. Great tool for revisiting big decisions. It's so useful for onboarding new team members. It avoids institutional knowledge and empowers all the team members. So everybody keep things along. When you're writing documentation, I always say, kind of write it for the least common denominator. You really want to be sure that the person who knows the least coming in is able to use these and learn and go from them. I think that's different from sort of saying, opening everything with Webster's dictionary defines software as, you're not assuming no knowledge. You're assuming the minimum level of knowledge for the reader who is the target audience for this documentation. So think about that like your junior onboarded developer. If you're publishing for the public, right, assume that they have knowledge of code. If you're writing a UI front end library, you don't need to explain to them what CSS is, but maybe why you're making it better, and that kind of thing. You also really want to optimize it for the person who needs a quick reference. So kind of with a lot of these things, we'll touch on this again. Assume that the person who's reading your stuff doesn't have unlimited time, that they're trying to get something done with the deadline. And if you make them read through War and Peace to get to the information that they need, you're going to lose them pretty quick. This is to say, like, don't be so terse that you are skipping important information in context. But brevity is a virtue. And then we have an example here of kind of one of those things. But this is a sneaky bonus example in also some other things to be careful of if you're going to publish documentation that people are starting to rely on. So we're going to go check the React Router Quick Start documentation, which we may have looked at earlier. Also a presentation hint, follow all links in your presentation before you actually give the presentation, and here's why. So if we go and we click into this, oh no, 404 not found. Where's the React Quick Start? This kind of thing can be super frustrating if you have a dev or anyone who's bookmarked your stuff and then they try and go and reference it later and it's moved. This can really throw people off who've been, kind of relying on your stuff. So if you're going to update, and in this case, what happened was React Router went to a newer version. So the document here is actually on the old version of their stuff. So I have that just pulled up over here. V5 React Router's Quick Start Guide is here, and it, shows you examples of code, with some context on the left and the examples on the right, and kind of the generic layout. Like, this is a good way to go through it because it shows you what you need to do while telling you about it at the same time. But again, if I was using this every day and it disappeared, I might, be upset about it. So just keep that in mind. But otherwise, like, yeah, here's a good example of, kind of documentation of your code. Next one up is going to be pull requests. We've talked about this quite a bit, actually. So I think you won't spend a ton of time here. But again, assume that the person reading your pull request doesn't necessarily have a lot of time. We've said, hey, the right way to do pull reviews is to pull down the code and execute it and follow all the testing criteria. And in reality, especially when you're trying to get attention from your more senior level people, they're probably going to be more like the doctor in, a busy hospital of like, they let the nurses do all of the initial triage and then they walk in and then they go, yep, you look healthy. I'm writing you the script and out the door, in 10 seconds, because they're kind of busy. So you want to be able to capture as much as you can for that audience as well when you're going through a pull request. And another thing too is in addition to giving people the context they need to walk through your code, a big part of interviewing, as you're going out there and trying to get jobs and stuff, is sitting there and talking and walking through your code. I think anymore, a lot of the whiteboarding exercises are kind of going out of favor in exchange for kind of take home exercises that allow you to take an assignment and think about it and implement it. But what will always happen after you get one of those is then you're going to talk to the hiring dev team and they're going to ask you to kind of walk through your code and explain your decisions and what you did. and having a good PR is not just good for people reading, but it also helps you walk through that discussion when you're ready to kind of explain your code with people. As I said before, kind of great pull requests include screenshots, GIFs, videos. The more you can show over tell is always a great, way to handle these things. Links to resources and permalinks to code that you reference. Again, watch for broken links. But like being able to send people off to, if they want to read more about what's actually going on here. Be sure to self-review, right? Make sure that it makes sense to you before you have somebody else to read it, which means actually go back through and read your pull request with, if you can give yourself, an hour or a day or something to like walk away and come back. That's always a good way to catch weird typos or things that didn't make sense or stuff that was out of order. Especially if you do what I like to do sometimes is I open up a pull request and I start reading my code and talking about it. And then I go, oh, actually, I should clean this up or change that thing. And so you go back and you update it again, and then you go back and now your pull request isn't necessarily in sync with the code that's in there. And you just, you kind of want to make those things, keep that in mind. Keep them small and narrowly scoped. Again, same thing as the documentation. Assume that no one has unlimited time to come in here and read your stuff. And then we've got a example from Stacy over here. So here's one where, we've got the types changes, new featured, updates dependencies. She's got the acceptance criteria checked off over here. It tells you which issue it's closing, the description, in detail of stuff that's going on, and, testing steps. You guys have been doing actually a pretty great job of this, so I feel like you know what's going on, but just a good thing to talk about. Okay, comments in code. Another very contentious issue, and everyone is going to have a different opinion on this, depending on who you talk to. So just kind of keep that in mind. There is no one-size-fits-all advice for comments in code, so be prepared to be a little bit flexible in how you think about this, depending on where you land, right? Because different people are just going to have different attitude and requirements towards this stuff. But in general, it gives your team more context while they're actively tracing through the code that you implemented. Code can in some ways be self-documenting, but the decisions behind the code are not always self-apparent. I'll say again, with the asterisks aside, a sort of vague rule here to follow is to say your code really should tell you what it's doing, right? Good function names, good variable names all should be, as a reader, I should be able to see the logic and understand what's going on. That might not tell me the why of it. And that might be more of what you're trying to aim for with commentary on the code. So, comments, if you just say this code does 2 + 2, and then you have 2 + 2, right? Kind of next line on the code. I didn't really need that comment. If you go well, I put 2 + 2 here because, the math.add function is doing it wrong, right? Oh, that might be useful information and good context for why you put that in there and instead of doing something else, right? So again, focus on the why. Here's another great example of code comments. So we've got one over in here, which again says all right, I have a state function that says, blah, 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 blah. If we have a default index, we need to do a few checks. It comes down here and it says, if multiple, return array is an array, default index. So if this thing is default index, then return it. If not, then do some fancy ternary stuff here. We say if multiple is set to true, we need to make sure the default index is an array. So that's what this is doing right here. And vice versa. We'll handle console warnings in our prototype, so this will at least keep the component from blowing up. So why did we do this goofy thing? Because it might explode, right? It's good context to have so that I don't come in here and go this looks weird, let me rewrite and delete it. And then, my app starts exploding. Okay, so kind of tried to blaze through this one a little bit because I think this is a good opportunity to ask questions and to remark on any of the experience that you've had both in TCL and outside of TCL with regard to good documentation, good doc sites that you feel like have done a really good job, terrible ones, Firebase, and Firebase isn't actually that bad, but relative to some others, I feel like you can get lost and not find the information that you need very quickly. And just, comments and code and all that stuff, talking with your team. So after having gone through the exercises yourself, does anyone have any thoughts or questions on documentation?
I just want to add, from a professional perspective, it'll really set you apart as a junior developer when you are giving good descriptions of your PRs in your Git pull requests and everything, and just giving as much context as possible. I've worked with senior devs that literally do not fill out the form, and it's a simple form. There's no screenshots, there's no nothing, and then I'm like talking to my team lead, and I'm like, I'm going back to a pull request from like a year ago, and there's no information, no reproduction information. It's very frustrating. So if you really want to set yourself apart and try to do what I'm doing, which is trying to get promotion in your field, that's going to be really important because you can also use that as part of your brag documents later on and say like, this is a log of like what I've accomplished. So that's something that you can always go back to later on in your career.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to say about that. It makes you look professional and polished when you walk in and you are able to pull together a pull request that lets anyone know what you're doing, especially as you're still trying to learn out the code base. And if you find yourself kind of easily flowing with the conventions and the, you get inside the head of your other developers, like you might need to find yourself explaining yourself a little bit less. But especially when you're new and in an area, being able to do that well, I think, yeah, makes you stand out and really gives you attention and makes life easier for everybody else who's trying to, help you learn and get on board with the team and understand your code. I think also like, good pull requesting also marks the maturity of a team. People who are used to going fast and they're, smart people who are always on the same page might not feel as compelled to have been as verbose in pull requests and comments and code and some of that other stuff because they didn't need to, because they're sitting next to each other, they're talking about it all the time. Like it wasn't necessary to spend the extra time to write all the stuff up. And then unfortunately, then you end up in situations where then you have a bunch of new people coming on the team and they're trying to figure out what you were doing. And, it's just very light on historical reference for why decisions were made in the code that was, put in there. Which is all to say it's not necessarily laziness or anything that causes a lack of documentation, in the past, but just that it wasn't the thing that was important back then, and now it suddenly is, and that kind of thing. But if you have those processes in place when you're starting out, and you're good and diligent and have good hygiene there, then you suddenly find yourself having this nice benefit of, I put in good comments, even though I didn't need them. I had a good pull request process in place, even though we all kind of knew what was going on. I was diligent about putting my documentation together, even though I didn't really know who the audience was or if this was needed yet. That stuff tends to yield rewards more often than not. Anyone new who comes in who decides to try and help you or consume your stuff will have a much easier time figuring out what's going on. Sorry, ending my soapbox now. Any other questions or thoughts on that?
Okay, I just kind of want to add that I went to a junior dev meetup over the summer, and there was a senior there just kind of like holding court and like giving advice and everything. And one of the things that he stressed a lot was just the importance of good documentation and how that can really make you stand out, especially when you're in the like application phases for jobs. And he also took time to stress that they were having problems in his company with when Chat GPT came out, of people using chat to write their documentation for them. somebody got away with it at first. It returned a good doc, and so they said, yeah, someone said, yeah, sure, we can just do this, and then next thing you know, their documentation was just all kinds of illegible, weird stuff. So he recommended that as a thing to avoid when writing documentation. Is using Chat GPT. I thought that would be worth throwing out there.
I'm having a hard time fathoming why someone would think that was a good idea, but
The last thing I want to add, just I posted this in chat, but the concept of leaving things better than you found them, it'll go a long way in your career, especially when it comes to pull requests and documentation.
ooh. And on that note, especially as a new person, one of the best things that you can do if you're new in an area and in the spirit of leaving things better than you found them, if you find that the documentation is missing that you go looking for, make it, write it down, put it out there. The odds are if you go looking for something and it's not there, someone else will follow you and want it to be there. And that is one of the best things you can do is just like clearly see like there's a missing spot and throw it in there. Yeah. Good call. All right. Any last things? And then I will hand it over to Grace. Okay, awesome. I'm done sharing.
All right, let me share my screen. Okay. So for this week's issues, I see you guys have been very busy, which is awesome. I see that there's one or two or three issues that are not taken yet. So let's jump right in. So styling the home page. Okay. If the user isn't logged into an existing list, they should not see the navigation bar since the other pages are not applicable. Styling also needs to be added to this page. And ACs, the header should be hidden if the user is not logged into a list, and the home page should be styled. This is really interesting. I see that as far as the issues that are already taken, looks like Archa has grabbed 2 of them, so that leaves 3. Hans already has 1. Does anyone have any preference as to who does what? Or do you guys just want to self-assign?
They're kind of weirdly different sized issues. Some of them are like 10-minute issues, and are like several hour issues, but like the one Hans has is really a big one, and then like to create a logo for a header was something I already did in 5 minutes. So yeah, I don't know. Magda and Jenny, if you all like, and maybe it just makes more sense for us to figure out during the week like what is going to take more time. But if you guys also want to grab something, go for it.
Yeah, I just kind of grabbed the list page one, sort of at random. I if someone wants that, I'm not super like precious or committed to anything. I wasn't sure if we were self-assigning these or not, so I just kind of grabbed that one to keep things moving, I guess. But yeah.
Okay. Well, I can talk through the other 2 issues, and then I can let you guys think about whether or not you want me to assign it or self-assign throughout the week. So the next one is adding styling for adding a new item. When a user is logged into a list, they should see a button to add a new item located under the list of items. Create and style an add item button. Create and style a modal when the button is clicked to add a new item. And you'll need to account for the different states of the modal, including when an item is successfully added, when an item name is blank, or an item name already exists in the list. And ACs, create and style the add item button, create and style the add item modal, and add styling for the drop-down menu to select when to next purchase the item.
Yeah, I'll take this one on. I might, yeah, this one's the meaty one. And we weren't exactly sure how, if we should split it into different issues or not. Right now it's a single one. But yeah, I think that'll be a good one.
There we go. So there's this one and this one. Interesting. This one's optional. I'm curious. I really like the mock-ups that you guys have made. That's really interesting. When the user adds an item, they should see an emoji that matches the item name. Add in an emoji picker library and add logic to generate the emoji for each item. Does anyone, MacDerry, is this something that you might be interested in, or would you want to take the other one?
Like the other one.
Okay. So let me not assign myself again. Perfect. Okay, cool. That's pretty much it for issues. I'll leave this optional one open, obviously. And then I'll just we'll just keep an eye on. It depends on what your bandwidth is, and if Hansa has a really big one, it might be something that you guys might need to swarm on this last week. So that's just something to keep in mind. Just your capacity for hours. Anyone have any questions or anything?
We got some time. Do we want to use it now to discuss anything that's left to go? Or you guys know all what everything and you're just ready to go and knock it out?
I think we're in a good place. We did spend a good amount of time last week really doing setup stuff. So I think we're in a place where we can just tackle our issues, or at least start on them, and for the bigger ones, then come back together.
Cool. I mean, we can give you your time back if you're ready and raring to go.
And I think Lyle, you're holding office hours this week.
Yep. So again, kind of I can put a thingy into the chat and we can talk about when works best for everyone. Same thing as last time. We can be a little flexible about who needs what, in terms of time or whatever. You've been using the room, so feel free to continue jumping into Zoom whenever you feel like it. One thing I want to mention from earlier, I realized this morning that I forgot that I said we were gonna walk through the list sorting thing. So I actually was poking at it just a little bit before the meeting today and decided that I didn't really like what the TCL library was doing. Effectively, what the problem was is that if you add a new item and then you check it right away, you were getting into it would just kind of hang out there checked. And I'd kind of wanted that to float to the bottom of the list because you just purchased it. The TCL library was saying if you pass in an estimate for its calculate estimate function, it would go with it said if you less than 2 total purchases on this item, just return the time from now and the last purchase date, as that'll be the estimate for how much longer it'll take to purchase the next one. Which might make sense if you added it a day ago, but it might not make sense if you're at the store and you add an item and then you click it off because you're like, oh, I need this and I want it on my list, but I didn't add it beforehand. And then the other thing was that checked items were just not floating to the bottom of the list either because it just wasn't in the requirement that we had for the sorting from before. It's one of those things that's a missed requirement. So in both of those things, I was like, I'm just going to try and fix this real quick. So I put up a PR for that. I don't really want to take your guys' time away from doing the look and feel stuff. That's getting the app kind of nice and important and shiny and should be fun. So I just went ahead and slapped that out. I may consider opening a pull request against the TCL library to say, like, I kind of disagree with this implementation and maybe we should do it this way, or not. So, and you may just decide that you actually don't like my change and you think it's dumb. So that's out there. It's worth it. But again, like, if we want to talk it through more, we can. But again, I think like y'all should focus on making the app pretty. So it's out there. So if anybody has questions about that, we can follow up on it too. Otherwise, I will put in a chat thing for office hours and we'll get that sorted here pretty soon. So any last thoughts before we wrap up the meeting?
One last thing, don't forget Career Lab is coming up after this cohort. So if you have time after the cohort, please feel free to take advantage of Career Lab. It's a wonderful resource for everybody. And there's a lot of mentors out there that are available. Yeah, definitely just try to take advantage of that if you can.
And to piggyback off of that, if those sessions will be recorded, so if anybody can't make the time, then you can still watch the material afterwards.
Really, really good exercises. So yeah, highly encourage it. Cool. All right. If you're gonna go watch football, go watch some football. Otherwise, do non-football-y things and enjoy your Sunday. And good luck out there. Be noisy, ask questions if you got them, and have fun.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. Bye.